Good morning. Thanks for joining me. I am Heather Hennessy from Heather Hennessy Life Coaching. As always, I am thrilled that you have joined me this morning, but I am not shouting at you or welcoming you with a loud hello. I assume that if you are tuning in to one of my videos, that you are a brand new mom who either has a sleeping baby in her presence or a baby who you wish were sleeping. So I give you very quiet welcome and thank you for joining me. So again, my name is Heather Hennessy. I am a certified life and weight loss coach. I specialize in helping brand new working mothers. So these are working women with their first baby either on the way or their first baby who is under the age of 18 months. And I work with you one-on-one in my coaching practice, and we give you exactly the toolkit that you need to be the working woman and mother that you most want to be. So that's who I am and what I do. Why do I specialize in working mothers with brand new babies? Because that's who I was not very long ago. And that is the time in my life where I underwent the most profound and transformative changes. It was a time for me that was very challenging, but I found those challenges offered me an opportunity to do things in my life that I had never been able to do prior to that time. So instead of viewing motherhood as a downgrade, which I think is something we're going to talk about today, and I think that that is an expectation that's sort of baked into the experience for so many of us. Um, I instead offer my clients the opportunity to use motherhood as an upgrade in every possible way. So, again, thank you for joining me. Today's topic is sort of the kickoff of what I think will be a few weeks where we really drill down into the state of motherhood at the moment, working motherhood specifically, and how we got here. And if you are a brand new mom and you were working on how to integrate your new baby with your career, kind of framing that up for you in a way that's helpful to you, I think that that's the beauty that coaching can really offer us, is that, we've got these places in our lives where there seems to be a conflict, and coaching can really give you the toolkit that you want to integrate all of it together. That was the case for me for sure. So I think that part of the baggage that we often enter into motherhood with is this notion that motherhood is somehow really hard, and that situation of motherhood being really hard is just a given, that there's not really any other option. And that motherhood is a place where lots of women who are otherwise very successful really struggle, right? So you've got whatever is happened in your life up to the point where you became a mom, right? In my case, that was a lawyer. I had, reached the top of my profession in my chosen career, and even made a career move, right? Like lots of career moves, quite frankly, but, a big one. And just kind of experienced really a lot professionally that was, very, very meaningful to me. And I thought, important in the world. So I had this kind of professional framework in which I was operating. And then, lots of like other personal accomplishments, right? Education, all the sort of boxes that we as women sort of think about checking off as we go through life. I had checked my boxes. And then motherhood came along, right? And so I had this string of successes in my life leading up to motherhood. And then motherhood came along, and I literally thought, I can't do this. Like, I could do all the rest of it, but I can't do this. It's just too much. This is too much. Like, even as a successful person, I had a crisis as I was in the early months of motherhood. Really, the first year plus of motherhood was like a literal crisis. So I know that I am not unique. I see so much of this. I hear so much of it. And the really, really twisted part is that I had a series of assumptions going into motherhood that it was going to be hard and that I was really, really going to struggle. And guess what? I did. Like, with those assumptions in my brain, I did struggle. So this it's this phenomenon. I'm still kind of working out how I want to talk about it and teach about it. But this notion that I had come up with and that I have since seen kind of mirrored back to me in, people's social media posts, is this notion that motherhood is like a hole. Like, you're kind of cruising through life and you become a mom and you dip down into this hole. And, right? Because those early months are such a struggle and so hard that you kind of go through this series of setbacks in your life that amount to going down a hole. Like I said, I had come up with that as I was like journaling and really thinking about how to help my clients and kind of thinking about my own experience. It's like I had a baby and gone down a hole. And I have seen this on, there are some groups that I belong to, social media, where I see that kind of language used, and those posts are always really popular. People are like, "Yeah, I'm down the hole. I'm like in the motherhood gutter, whatever." It's some version of that terminology. And in my own journaling, I sort of talk about so I'm going along, I go down the hole, and then I climbed my way out of it in this really sort of slow process that took me a long time to figure out, and where I sort of got it wrong more often than I got it right. And so, when I talk about my sort of coaching practice and the benefits of coaching, it's to really level that off for people, right? So there is no hole that you go down, or if you do, right, it's more of like a minor dip, and then you level back off. It's not this like, you go down the Grand Canyon. And and furthermore, that you do this on purpose, right? This little like, I'm going to have a baby, and there's going to be a period of adjustment that I'm going to undertake very intentionally. I am going to rest. I am going to pause. My life is going to change, and I'm going to take some time on purpose to adjust to those changes. That is where I want my clients to be, instead of, I'm at the bottom of the hole and I don't understand how I got here and I don't understand how to get out. So this bit, right? That hole was my experience of motherhood. And I'm pretty convinced that is the popular assumption about what motherhood, especially for working women, entails. And that's normal and it's expected, and that it happens to everybody. Fascinating. So tomorrow happens to be, I'm recording this video on Tuesday, May the 5th of 2020. Tomorrow, Wednesday, May 6th of 2020, happens to be this year's celebration of World Maternal Mental Health Day. When I became a mom, I had no idea there was such a thing. Even worse, had I known that that date was happening, I wouldn't have thought that it applied to me. Right? Because even though I was down the hole, I thought I was supposed to be there. I thought I was supposed to be in a hole. I thought I was supposed to be struggling. I thought it was supposed to be really hard. I thought I was normal. So the phrasing of it, World Maternal Mental Health Day, even if you don't have a sort of classic, what we would think about as a postpartum kind of mental health condition, right? You're not postpartum depression. And you know that. That was me, right? I knew that I didn't have postpartum depression. I had done self-screening. I had been screened by my doctor. I thought I was just down the hole and that was normal. Even if you do not have a maternal mental health condition, you still have maternal mental health. That is important. This is your mental and emotional state during the time where you are a new mom. So the website description of this day says that World Maternal Mental Health Day draws attention to the essential mental health concerns for mothers and families. And it goes on to cite the statistic that worldwide, as many as 1 in 5 women experience some type of perinatal mood and anxiety disorder, which is abbreviated PMAD. PMADs include postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, postpartum obsessive compulsive disorder, postpartum bipolar, and postpartum psychosis. And that the estimates are that 7 in 10 women downplay or hide their symptoms. So I knew, right, during the early months of my motherhood, I knew that I was not on the, which I can now see, right, from this description from these experts, that it's like a spectrum. I knew that I wasn't on the side of the spectrum that was postpartum depression, going all the way in its most extreme cases to postpartum psychosis. I knew I wasn't in that camp. I just thought I was in the normal hole. But when I take my experience and the experience of so many others who I encounter and I compare it to this, right? So this helps us frame it up here. There's the rest of this spectrum that is postpartum anxiety, postpartum OCD, and this other sort of set of stresses and, postpartum mental and emotional adjustments that equate to the whole. And so anyway, finding this description totally described me to myself. In my words at the time, right? I was struggling. I wasn't okay, but I thought I was. I thought I was normal. I thought it was what I was supposed to be experiencing. No idea where to go for help. And the most toxic part of this assumption that motherhood makes you go like this is that I didn't think I deserved help. I didn't think I needed help. I thought I ought to be able to figure it out by myself. Do you see how toxic that assumption is? If you identify with that, if you feel like you're a new mom and you're sort of down in a hole and it's your job to by yourself figure it out, what? Why did I think that? Why did I have that assumption? Why didn't I appreciate that what I was experiencing was not a given, right? I totally thought it was. So again, I didn't know where to turn and I didn't think I deserved or needed help. I'm a very successful and fortunate person with lots of privileges and resources. And I'm well aware of that, right? I'm totally aware of all of those things. And it never dawned on me that I was in need of actual help or that I could or should be seeking it out. And the places that I went for help were just woefully inadequate. Looking back on it, there's like the medical community who, once they determine that you're not in the postpartum depression, you know, side of the spectrum, they kind of say, okay, see you later, which is what they're supposed to do, right? Like that's their concern is the group of people who are trending toward um, the symptoms that do need to be treated medically. And I didn't belong in that camp. And then the sort of resources of the there's sort of medical, right? If we're sort of putting all this on a spectrum, sort of medical, and then the like curated experts on the internet, right? So this is websites that really serve communities of mothers. I just did not find them to be helpful or relevant at all for a host of reasons. And then the sort of like group of people who might have walked in my shoes before me, right? Like mentors or role models or peers who had done it differently, right? Who had not gone down the hole. I didn't have any examples of that. By, happenstance, I did not have people who I could really quiz and say, like, how did you make this work? What do I need here? I think there are people who are able to rely on peers or mentors. Those people are very lucky. And from what I see, I think that's a small group. And then, you know, there is another source of kind of information and assistance that's like your your immediate like friends and family and peers. Again, within that group for me, I just didn't have any examples of working women who were very high achieving in their careers and who had done what I was trying to do and done it like gracefully and successfully. So, I'm down the hole. I don't know where to go for relief. I don't know where to go for help. I don't really think I deserve help. You could see how my hands were tied, right? Totally. So, it, as a working mother at that time, I also happened to be the family breadwinner. Like when the baby came, I happened to be the person in our family who was earning the bulk of our income. So I literally felt like I could not afford to take any time to sort of sort myself out and get out of the hole, right? I thought, oh, this is just how life is now. I just have to live and work and mother and try to keep it all together while I'm down in the bottom of my hole. And I because I felt like I could not slow down and take care of myself, and I was denying that I was struggling because I felt so much shame about the fact that I was struggling. And I just didn't even let myself go there and acknowledge that I needed to do things differently, right? So while I was trying down at the bottom of the hole, I was sort of trying to recreate what my life had been before I became a mom, instead of looking around from the bottom of my hole and going, oh, I actually need completely different things than I needed before. And, we have this because we're all human, right? And we have a human brain. Our brains are pre-programmed to try to recreate the past. That's just what we're doing on autopilot. And as a new mom, right, your world is upside down. Was for me, again, totally. Motherhood threw me for a loop in so many ways that I couldn't figure out how to create anything new and different. I was just trying to like get back to how things used to be before the baby came along. Completely, right? Like it's like being in a three-way tug of war with yourself. Right? Like, so, you're sort of the motherhood side saying, wait a minute, we have to do things differently now. And then your brain going, no, 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 we need to go back to how we used to do things. And then, the reality of it all. Anyway, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't fun. Talk about a struggle, right? And I think that there are lots of working women who are new mothers who are in exactly that place. It seems to be so common. It seems to be just the way that because society approaches motherhood that way, that's how we all approach it. Um, it was no accident that I struggled the way that I did. No accident. And again, the worst part of it was that I thought I was supposed to be struggling. And so did everyone around me, right? All the people around me were sort of bought in. The expectation that the challenges that working women face when they become mothers equate to a downgrade, right? That assumption is so pervasive. And everybody's just like, oh, well, she had a baby. Everything kind of just went to heck in a handbasket. So through my own work on myself and through my work with my clients, I have come to believe that I am not okay with the assumption that working motherhood equals a downgrade. I am not okay with that assumption. And if you are currently a new working mom and that is the assumption that you have for yourself or that other people have for you, I invite you to consider some alternatives. It is not okay with me that working mothers who with new babies feel terrible by default. And it is not okay that working motherhood is a downgrade. So, as we sort of sit here today, and I've outlined some of this, but let's talk more specifically about why we have these assumptions to begin with. Why is feeling terrible as a new mother the norm? And what do we do about it right now? So, our starting point is to understand a bit about why it's totally normal for new mothers to feel kind of terrible. So, number one is the difference between our expectations and our reality. And there's a lot to unpack here, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of things. Generally speaking, we like things in theory a lot more than we like them in reality. That's just human nature, right? There's just a big difference between like the thing you've got to have, like I've got to have that dress or that purse, or even something trivial like I've got to have that meal that I'm really craving, or I've got to have that house. That house is my dream house. Then you get it and your brain is like, this house has a leaking roof. These shoes pinch my toes, right? That meal actually made my stomach hurt and my pants are too tight, right? Like the wanting of the thing versus the attaining of the thing are very different. Babies are exactly the same experience. And it's not the baby's fault, right? It's totally has nothing to do with the baby. It's it's our brain, right? That again, that human phenomenon of the wanting of something and the sort of desire for it. Like I really wanted to be a mom. And in some ways it was everything I had dreamt it would be. But then in actual reality, our brains are just like, this baby sure does need a lot of diaper changes, right? It just the difference between the wanting of something and the actual having of it. And there is discomfort there. And our brains are thinking a lot about how fantastic it's going to be prior to the baby's arrival. Our brains are not thinking, hey, I'm going to change 20 diapers a day for years, or or what, right, what have you, right? Like I'm going to wake up every night multiple times to care for this baby, and I'm going to have interrupted sleep, for months and months, right? Our brains are just not thinking about that part. So when we actually encounter that in real life, our brains are like, this is not what I signed up for. So that the difference between the expectations that we have and the reality. There's a tension there that is normal, but we're not anticipating it, and it causes us to feel sort of terrible. And then this phenomenon that we've been talking about, where there's a societal expectation that motherhood equals a downgrade, I think that has the effect of being like an anchor around our ankle. Like while we're trying to swim, we're like towing a heavy load. So even when we sort of feel a little bit of like uplift as new moms, like, oh, this is actually like, I'm so in love with my baby, I don't even know what to do with myself, right? Like that's a pretty common um experience, right? Like you're so in love with your baby, but you're struggling on so many levels. Again, there's a tension there that we just kind of don't know what to do with, right? Where it confuses us. It literally confuses a very primitive part of our brains to be so overjoyed by something, but also so like tired at the same time. And so that phenomenon, combined with the sort of societal like assumption that you're going to go down a hole, it's working against us. And then the other thing that I think is really important to understand is this collective lack of a toolkit that working women can apply for themselves during the earliest months of their motherhood. That's what I was looking for, right? I was actively seeking how to feel better. I was actively seeking, what can I do, right? I had some awareness that I was down a hole and that I didn't want to be, but the lack of a ready-made toolkit to help me start to climb out, I mean, I created that for myself, right? That's now what I create and offer to my clients. But I didn't have it and I didn't know where to go get it. Again, all those sources, right? Like medical, curated websites on the internet, peer groups, people in my life, none of those things had the toolkit to offer me. So I was like, it's not out there. Sure enough, it wasn't. I had to build it myself. So here we are. But the lack of that toolkit is a big problem. The other big problem is that there's no word for it that is common in our vocabulary. There is a term, it's the term matrescence, rhymes with adolescence, and it is the definition of the phase of a woman's life where she's learning how to be a mother. And it's not a medical term, it's like an anthropological term. And it's not very common in our language. It's certainly not common in society. But like during adolescence, we have an expectation that teenagers are like changing and that they're not going to be who they were before. They're going to be somebody different on the other side, and that that's okay. We don't have that expectation for mothers, but matrescence as a term and as a working definition is really describes that, right? Like it is this sort of bundle of changes that happen because the woman prior to motherhood is not the same as the woman who has become a mother, right? Like there's just physically, mentally, emotionally, and in all other ways, right? There's just this different person, but there's not an expectation that there's going to be a different person. So this sort of, again, I'm talking about expectations versus reality, but the one is your internal expectations versus reality, and then sort of the expectations of others in your life versus your new reality as a mom, right? All of that is at work here. And then the final reason that I think I was really feeling terrible, like on top of all that I've already described, I was kind of feeling terrible because feeling terrible was sort of how I had felt for years. I just had been coping with that differently prior to the baby coming along. And that is for those of us who struggle as we adjust to motherhood, I think that that might be common. And I see it a lot. I don't have any statistics or data about how common it is, but I suspect, and the more people I talk to and the more, clients I interact with, that's my suspicion, is that it's actually pretty common. So what I think that working women who are new mothers need right now is ownership over their experience. That ownership, I think, arises from freedom of the assumptions of society, and it also arises from acknowledgement that there are challenges involved in new motherhood that are normal. Then from that place of ownership, the tools that we use to grow and change on purpose into the working mother that you want to be, that are mental and emotional changes and changes in your lifestyle and changes in your decision making, all of those things are part and parcel of this, of what you need right now, I think. So we're going to spend the next few weeks talking about all of this in more detail and in very concrete terms. And I'm happy to entertain specific questions from people. If you're interested, or if any of this sort of sparked some thoughts for you, you can find me here online and submit some questions. You can go to my website and learn a little bit more about me. My coaching practice is currently taking new clients. So that is also something that I want to offer to people. And if you want to work with me, I would be thrilled to be part of your motherhood journey. So again, happy Maternal Mental Health Day. Take good care.